Welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. My name is Matt, and I'm going to show you how to create a cool little cyber glowing effect thing within Photoshop. I only use one texture in this file. Pretty much everything else is created within it, and I'm going to show you what it is. It's this amazing green X, and you can use any shape that you'd like. I picked an X. I just grabbed a font and typed in the X to get this. And I actually got the idea from watching another video tutorial from Check It. Well, that's how he says it. But yeah, I watched a little video where he showed the extrude, and I got this idea here that I thought it would be so cool to just kind of create a little matrix, like, you know, kind of Cybertron little effect where there are little glows around the edges of these cubes. And so I thought, why not? Let's see if I can go within Photoshop and figure out how to kind of make a cool little effect thing. So I got this image here, and I'm going to show you how I made it. I'm going to actually start from the ground up, and I'll go through with you and create it. So yeah, let's jump into that and get started. So I'll show you kind of a rough overview of what I have here as far as layers go, so you get an idea of what we're going to make. And I'm going to start with creating a new document. I made this one, I think, pretty much a 2:1 ratio, but I'm going to make it a little bigger. So 2,500 pixels, probably by about say 1,300, maybe 1,400 pixels high. We'll start with that. Fill the background with black, which if you have your black and white selected, you just press Control or Alt backspace, and I'll fill that. So to get started, we're going to lay down an X or any other character, and I'm actually going to pick a different letter initial this time, and I'm going to choose M for my initial because I think it's best letter in the alphabet. And yeah, so yeah, you just need to get any text shape that you want, and you want to make it pretty large. Okay, and I don't like that font, so let's pick, I'm gonna go pick just a pretty simple, straightforward font, blocky. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, that'll work. I'll scale it out a little wider and a little bigger. And here's a cool little shortcut to align something, or at least, so you use Control A to select your whole artboard, and then just use your align tools, and it'll set it right into the document. Nice little tip there. So once that's made, to get the kind of waving text is actually a filter called extrude, and to make it look like that, I'm just going to render some clouds by going up to Filter, Render, Clouds. Just go with that for right now, and I'm gonna, yeah, that's fine. And then what you want to do is take these two layers here and click Convert to Smart Object. And the reason I do that is so that you know, if you want to change it, make some adjustments to it, we're going to do some live filter effects onto the layer here in the original document. And the second thing we need to do, because the extrude filter works by, you can I'll show you. Oh goodness, I can't remember where it's at. Okay, style as extrude, took me a second. You can set it to level based here, which will mean that if it's white, if the pixels behind it are white, it'll pull it out a lot. If it's black, it doesn't do it very much. So that kind of gives you an idea what we're going to probably create here with the image. So I'm going to create an invert adjustment layer, just like that. And I'm also going to adjust this layer here and make it a little dimmer so that it's it's black level and white level. I'm using the wrong sliders. I want the black level to not, I don't want anything to be at level with the M. So I'm bringing this up to probably about, I'm just looking at right here, I probably want to right about in the middle. Click OK, and then I'm going to bring the transparency down just a little. Maybe like right there, just a slight. Okay, so we save that, go back into the original document. Now that I've got this here, this is when we're going to do the extrude. So we go, gotta remember, oh goodness. Extrude, make sure that it's set to blocks. The pixel size, I think, is 25 that I used. The depth, I set that relative pretty high, 160. And then solid front faces means that there'll be a solid color instead of the actual background. So let's see what we get with applying that to the layer with our M. Okay, cool. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, we'll see what we can do with that. So then from there, we're going to use this texture here to do a lot of the masking and a lot of the effects that you see in here, such as the edges, and there's even a lens blur that I use with it, because since this is, we'll go through that later, I'll show you. But first step that I did on this was I wanted to add some more shading to the layer, and I felt that it was kind of very bland, very blocky, you know, and that's okay. But I wanted to add some more depth, so I duplicated a layer, rasterized it, and then I go up to filter. I think it's in stylize. No, it's in sketch. Photo copy. And see, if you look here in the photo copy around the edges, it's putting a little bit of a gradient, kind of a fade thing onto it. And this is nice because what we'll do with this afterwards, we can set the blending mode, if you can already guess, and it'll add some shading on those blocks for us. And if I remember, I think I actually had it set to about 12 on the previous one. And darkness, I want to clip the black, but I want to be able to control the opacity and bring it back if it's over applied. So I'll just hit OK with that and see what we get. Okay, and then you just go up here and set it to a multiply, and we can see the before and after, how it kind of just adds a little more detail, which I think is a little too much. So I'm going to drag this down. Okay, it's just subtle, but there it is. Okay, the next thing is we need to find the edges of the, I duplicated the wrong layer. We need to find the edges to create that glow effect. So duplicate the background, rasterize layer. I'm actually going to duplicate this because we're going to do this several times over. And we're going to go with filter. I remember where the glowing edges, right here. So this is going to help us find the edges in the document. Obviously, edge brightness. I didn't want it to go too high because I didn't want all the areas to have a lot of white, where you see right in here. I wanted it to be have a lot of variety in the luminosity values between the different edges. So I kept it pretty much in the middle on the edge brightness, and the smoothness, I didn't want it to be blocky, because the idea that I was going to have was that these edges were leaking light that's going to be coming from the shape here, in this case the M. And so I didn't want it to be 100% around the edges, but pretty close. So I set the smoothness to 2. And the edge width on this first one, we're going to set to 2. So we're going to do this twice over. So once that's set, let's create another one by duplicating this, which we can do by dragging down on the new layer, or Control J will do the same thing. And we're going to go with filter again and sketch. Oh, it's not sketch, it's stylize, glowing edge. And set the edge width down to 1. And this will be used for creating more of a highlight effect. And I'm going to bring down the edge brightness just a hair. And this I could probably get away with doing smoothness at 0 or 1. Okay. All right, so now that that's applied, okay, you're probably wondering when we're going to add the color in, and I'll show you. But I got to remember which one is, so this is edge glow 1 pixel, edge glow 2 pixel. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do, because I want to be able to apply a glow to this, I can't do this because it's just white and black pixels. So we're going to select everything, press Control C, and go over to the channels and create a new channel to be able to create a mask anytime that we want. Okay, so we'll call this 1 pixel glow. Go over to the, or was that the 2 pixel one? That was the 2 pixel one. Oh, I labeled them wrong. Let's quickly fix that. 1, 2. Control A, copy, bring this over into the channels. And you know what? I don't even think we do that with the 1 pixel glow, so I'm just going to overwrite that. Control copy that. Control V. Paste. I don't know why there we go. Okay. So with that selected, the edge glow 2 pixel, I'm just going to erase that actually, and I'm going to come in here, select that, and create a new layer and fill it with white, which I actually did black. Okay. So you can see that it's now adding that white edge around it. And then this layer, we're just going to set it to screen. Okay. And this is just setting everything up for us to be able to create this cool effect after. We're just setting it up. I know it's going slow, but we're setting it up. So the next step is to select the M here, because we need to create its own layer to apply some effects to that. So I'm going to turn everything off and just isolate this layer here. And using the color range, I'm just going to have that M selected about as roughly as I can get it. It doesn't need to be exact, just close enough. And create a new layer and fill it with black. And I'm going to lock the pixels and just fill it with black. Yeah, that's a cool shortcut. If you didn't know that, you can lock the pixels and then just fill it with a color, which is what I wanted to do there. Now I'm just going to grab my brush, and I'm actually going to set it to a color overlay of red so I can see where it's being applied. And I'm going to have to go in and just kind of erase a little bit by hand. I don't want it to be applied. Okay, close enough for me, almost at least. Holding down the shift key while you click the brush, you can create a straight line between it. So I'm going to click there, there, whoop. And I'm going to, let's erase them on these few blocks here. Doesn't have to be exact, just close enough. Okay, I'm going to leave that right there because I'm going to try and keep the tutorial as short as I can. Okay, so let's erase that layer effect, turn everything else back on. Okay, it's starting to look like it. We're getting close. The next thing I'm going to do is create a layer with a filter of fibers, and you want to set its variance down pretty low. and the strength up fairly high. And it's a little too much. Randomize until you get something that's got a good amount of fibers. Okay, something like that'll work. And then we'll go filter, motion blur, do it pretty much up and down. Doesn't have to be exact, but in this case I'm going to make it exact. Okay, just like that. Okay, this is where things are going to start coming together. So we're going to grab the layer here, and I'm going to apply a color, a gradient overlay actually. And I'm going to use this gradient here that I've got saved, which is basically just a bright yellow going to a bright green, which is more of a yellow green, then fading out to black, and then set that to radial, reverse it, and then just set it to multiply. An easy way to color that. And here's another way you can kind of get it to be a little bit bigger. Okay, so there we go with that. I know this M is going to be up on top. Okay, and then grab the M. Go color overlay, set it to a bright greenish yellow, and I've got this hue of 80 and everything else set to 100% right here. And then we're going to apply an inner glow, just slightly, because remember this is where the light's kind of coming out from, and so it's going to be blowing. It's going to be blowing out the clipping in a way, and so I wanted to have a clipping effect. So I'm going to create the source in the center, I think is where it was. Yep. And then set its blending mode to, I think I had color burn, and set it to white or about gray. It's not wanting to, oh, not color burn, color dodge. And see, now it gets it pushes it to that yellow. I'm going to set the choke up. Okay. Just like that. And then I'm going to add some noise. I liked the noise that the kind of look it gave, which kind of like it was a textured surface in the background. And I'm just going to move the range to kind of give me that feel that I'm wanting. And yeah, about right there, and probably bring down its opacity a little more. Okay, just like that. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had someone at the door I had to go see. So going back into the image, I've had a chance to kind of review this. And when we set the glow effect, if you look at the original, and I'll show you after this, it was more of a light white, or a light yellow color. And so I'm actually going to select a lighter yellow in here to see if that'll give me the effect, and probably set it more to like a linear dodge. There we go. See, and kind of give me that brightness to it. And yeah, there we go. And that kind of gives me what I'm looking for. Okay, so perfect. We're gonna just roll with that and see how it ends up kind of turning out. It's not gonna look exactly like it, but I'm gonna do my best to show you how to do it. So now the next thing we need to do is, now that the glow, okay, so we have the glow. If I turn these two layers off, you can see that there are an edge, edge highlight around all of this here. Now the problem with this is in this image here, I wanted it to show up abundantly and very brightly in the shadows, where in here where there's some midtones, I didn't want it showing up so much. So to do that, we have to make a mask to tell it where to apply these effects. And I'm actually going to basically use what we started with here, which is this here. So pressing Control A, I'm going to select everything and copy this, and I'm going to go into the channels to create a new channel. It'll be a mask, and I'm going to actually edit this just a little, because it's not very bright, or it's not very bright, it's not very contrasty and bright, and because I'm knowing that whatever's white, it's going to apply the effect, and whatever's black, it's not going to apply the effect. And I'm going to invert it too, and you can see that going on here. And then I'm going to filter, and I'm going to blur this, because if I don't blur it, it's going to match it right at the very edge, and it's not going to look exactly like we want. And I believe I blurred it for like 5 or so pixels. So just like that. Okay, click OK. Come into here, holding down the control key, I'm going to click on this alpha channel, which will highlight everything based on its the values in there. And I'm going to click back, holding down Alt, bring back everything that I had previously in here. And I don't want to see that just yet. And then I'm going to click the layer mask button right here. And it should, if you can see, if I declick, holding that shift key, you can click on a mask and it'll hide or disable it and enable it when you click it. Toggle it on and off. I'm going to, yeah, see, you can tell that over here in the highlights, when I apply it, they lessen. And whereas over here, they're still the same. And that's exactly what I want it to do. And I'm going to, I think, just duplicate this mask. So if I hold down Alt and just drag it up to the next layer, it'll duplicate the mask and do the same thing. So now it's being really applied. Yeah, it's more so in the shadows, and it's almost maybe, I'll have to see how that winds out. I'm going to go ahead and darken the overall image here because I really want the glow to show through, and you can kind of see it's starting to pull it out, which is perfect. And I'm going to set this below here so that it doesn't affect the glow. Now, the reason that I have this set, so this is in a black and white, and this is set with transparency, is because I'm going to apply a glow to this layer here. And it's just going to be a simple outer glow. Its color set to warm green. And set its linear dodge to its color mode, and then adjust its size to, yeah, about maybe 10 pixels. I'm going to introduce just a little bit of noise. Bump that up all the way. Maybe a little less noise, maybe like 4%. And turn on anti-aliasing, click OK. And then with this image, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate its transparency up in here because I want it to be more so applied actually to the opposite. I want it to be applied to the highlights of the image. So I'm just going to have that mask selected and press Control I, and it'll invert that, and you can see that it's going to change that to the highlights. Now it's a little too much for me. I don't like what that's doing, and I'm probably going to change this to another blending mode. Yeah, right there. And yeah, let's just see what that looks like. Kinda, it's all right. It's not at all what I was hoping with the glow. So I need to actually apply another glow, which is to this layer, which I forgot. Yeah, the outer glow. There's just a subtle, it's kind of subtly, I guess. Depends on what you define subtle. And it's going to be a kind of light yellow green. I don't want to get away too far away from the green color. And I'll shoot that out. Color dodge. Now I'm going to set linear. There we go. There we go. A lot better than what it was previously. And set that at 100%. And yeah, it's kind of bright and a little too much actually. And I'm going to put some noise into this as well. Let only like 2 or 7. And it's a little too much, so let's bring down its opacity just a little bit right there. Yeah, see, that makes a world of difference right there. Okay, so yeah, that's making some that's making a good amount of difference there. Now this image here, I think it's applying itself a little too much in the shadows, or what we have is that the glow isn't being applied as much as I was hoping it would be. So linear dodge doesn't seem to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to filter because it's black and white and I can't redo it. I'm going to adjust this setting here, which is maximum, which basically says whatever was 1 pixel, it pushes it outward, which will work perfect for what I'm doing here. And I think that kind of does do it. I'm just curious to see what it would do if I did it to this layer. Which actually kind of, yeah, I need to do filter other minimum to expand it. And that kind of gives me, I think, a little bit more of the effect that I was originally looking for. So I'm going to go with this layer. And then I'm going to edit and, oh, you can't fade that. Well, that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. So there we go. It's looking a little more like it. I kind of don't like how this is being applied here. This effect, it's almost completely absent in the shadows, which is, I think, too much. So I'm going to adjust its levels because it wasn't being applied down here enough. And I think it was being applied too much in the highlights. So I'm going to reduce this here, which will darken the highest values. And now I'm just kind of thinking in my mind as I'm doing this what it's going to look like. Okay, try that. And let's see. And somehow it turned red. I don't know how that happened. Am I in layer? I do not know what just happened. Okay, somehow it, wow, that was magical. Okay. So I think I've got, a general feel of how I like the effect going on here. It's not an exact match, but I think it's pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close, and it's doing pretty well. So I'm gonna now take it to the next step, which is applying the layer. Applying the layer. Gosh, I'm all kinds of messing up, but I need to create the lens blur effect because if you notice in the original image, it's kind of blurred, which you can't see right now because I turned it off, but it's blurry up here on the top. So to do that, I have to basically have a, flatten the image, and I don't want to lose all these layers. So there's a shortcut key, and I'm not sure where you find it in the menu, but if you hold Control Shift Alt E, it'll take whatever you have visible on the screen and apply it to a new layer above whatever layer you have selected. So this is merged. I'm going to call this merged. And then to create a layer where it's going to blur things, I'm going to select this layer here. But I'm going to invert it. So I need to duplicate. Actually, no, I don't need to duplicate it because I can adjust that setting. So this is going to be my blur layer. So it's going to say whatever is far away, blur whatever is near, and it's going to base it on these white values, right? So take this, go to Filter, Blur, Lens Blur. Make sure your source you have alpha 1 selected or whatever you've named. Make sure that's the selected object. And I'm going to just increase this a lot to make sure it's blurring what I want. It's not, so I'm going to invert it. And you can see the highlights are being blurred while this stuff back here is being left alone, which I like, but it's too much. I'm going to add, there's a little noise, bring down the noise, I think down to 3. Okay, and I think I'm going to go with that. So press OK, and that'll apply the lens blur effect and give you that kind of, some additional depth in the image. After this, we're going to apply the lens flares, which I did by just creating a new layer using the lasso tool, or not the lasso tool, the elliptical marquee tool. And I'm just going to highlight it across the screen, make it thin and long, and then fill it with white, or fill it with black. And bring this down. I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to set the group to linear dodge, and I'm going to transform this to be a little bit wider, which I'm going to have to make the adjustment up in here. So that gives me this look. And now what I'm going to do to make it look like it's glowing is add a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and I'm going to bring the saturation all the way up, set it to about roughly, this hue in here somewhere. Now when you do this, you're not going to see anything, right? Because it can't apply a saturation to a white color. So you do this by tricking it by bringing down its lightness value, and that should do it. Oh, you got to make sure colorize is set to on, and bump that up, bring it down, And you can see it's just barely beginning to apply it. So I'm going to stick with that. Go down to layer, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and do maybe like a 3 pixel blur. And there you go. And I'm going to duplicate this layer a few different times because we're just going to basically move it around and scale it up and scale it down. And its height, I'm going to do 50%. Just like that. Same thing with this layer. I want it to go over there, and its height, I'm going to set it down to 70%. I don't know that I want it going off screen. So scale this. The idea is it's highlighting different aspects of it. Now the original layer, which is this one right here, I'm going to transform this by scaling it in to kind of create that larger glow. And I'm actually going to offset this to give it some look like it's coming at an angle, and increase its height to 200. Maybe 250 or 240. Ooh, that's a lot. 240. And that looks about right. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer by pressing Ctrl J, or you right click, duplicate layer. And I'm going to do one more transformation, shrink it down, and enlarging that just like that. Okay, that's good to me. And I think I'm just going to duplicate this layer and apply a few more little lighting glow effects to it, however you feel it's going to work. But I tried to make some adjustments so they're not all equal. And I'm going to move this over here. Okay, there we go. That's how I made this document. I think I'm going to end the tutorial here and kind of let you compare the two. This one looks, I think, a little sharper, and this one, it looks maybe a little more blurred more. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of how it happened with the workflow. Well, actually, it is pretty sharp. The screen's not showing it as well. But yeah, I hope you learned a lot. I hope you learned some new tools and some ways to use to create some, interesting new images. My name's Matt with Creative 8. I hope you comment and like this video. Please do that, and I'll see you around. Take care.